Welcome to Heart of the Matter, the program which is committed to telling you the truth about who must do what and why if the Palestine problem, the cancer at the heart of international affairs, is to be cured before it consumes us all. For first-time viewers, I think I should say again that this program's mission is to set a new agenda for informed and honest debate. This means two things. The first is that I am addressing questions which the mainstream media and almost all politicians are too frightened to ask. The second is that my guests, men and women of all faiths and none, are voices which powerful vested interests would prefer citizens not to hear. My guest tonight is a Jewish-American political scientist and author who Jewish supporters of Israel, right or wrong, love to hate. He is Norman Finkelstein. The reason why Finkestein is vilified by Jewish supporters of Israel, right or wrong, can be simply stated. In his writing and public speaking, as in his doctoral thesis, he is committed to exposing books which present Zionism's version of history. They are, he writes and says, part of a monumental hoax, fraud and nonsense. His friend Noam Chomsky once warned him in a letter that he would get into trouble because, Chomsky wrote, "You're going to expose the American intellectual community as a gang of frauds, and they're not going to like it, and they're going to destroy you." A dramatic moment in Zionism's ongoing attempt to destroy Finkestein, and also its highly successful strategy for restricting academic freedom in general, came in June of last year, 2007, when, giving in to Zionist pressure, Chicago's DePaul University denied him tenure. Prior to that decision, Finkestein had been an assistant professor at DePaul for 6 years, and described in an official university statement as a prolific and outstanding teacher. The title of Finkestein's first book, published in 2000, was The Holocaust Industry, Reflections on the Exploitation of Jewish Suffering. It, Zionism's use of the obscenity of the Nazi Holocaust as a blackmail card, is among the issues I discussed with Finkestein when he was here in London. Will you please tell viewers a little about your own family's history as victims of the obscenity of the Nazi Holocaust?
Both my parents, well, they didn't know each other. They were in the Warsaw Ghetto from 1939, September 39 to April 43. After the ghetto uprising, the survivors, estimates are 30 to 40,000 survivors of the ghetto, were deported to Majdanek concentration camp. At that point, even though they didn't know each other, but physically they also parted ways. My father was in Auschwitz, and at the end of the war, he was in the Auschwitz Death March, and he was liberated by the Americans. My mother stayed in Majdanek, then she was in 2 slave labor camps, and she was liberated by the Russians. Every single member of their family on both sides was exterminated during the war. They met in the displaced people camp, the DP camp in Linz, Austria, and then ended up in the United States.
Now, you've described Zionism's exploitation of the memory of the Holocaust as an ideological weapon, which enables the Zionist state of Israel, one of the world's most formidable military powers, and to use your words, with a horrendous human rights record. You said this use of this weapon enables Israel to cast itself as a victim state in order to garner immunity to criticism. Will you put some flesh on the bone of that statement and tell us from your perspective how the playing of the Holocaust card has worked to date to make Israel immune from criticism in the Judeo-Christian world?
Well, the basic innovation of what I call, not that it's a brilliant coinage, but just if I can refer to it, the Holocaust industry, its main innovation was, beginning in the 1970s, this whole cottage industry developed, trying to prove what was called Holocaust uniqueness, or what, if you read the scholarly literature, is called the uniqueness doctrine. And there was this vast proliferation of in my opinion, pseudo-scholarship, which could probably fill this entire room, trying to demonstrate that the Nazi Holocaust was unique in the sense that no people in the history of humanity had ever suffered the way Jews suffered. Now, intellectually, that doctrine is vacuous. Morally, it's an abomination, this notion of ranking human suffering. How can you prove that somebody who's been napalmed, a child who's been napalmed, has suffered less than a child who has been dispatched to a gas chamber?
Or we could talk about red Indians in America.
Right. You know, how do you prove things? And why would you even want to go there, you know?
Well, why do they go there is the point.
That's the point. Because intellectually it's barren, morally it's an abomination, but politically it's very useful. Because if you can prove that people have suffered uniquely, then the natural corollary is they should get special moral entitlements. They shouldn't be held to the same standard as the same moral or legal standard as everyone else.
And do you really believe, Norman, it was as calculating as that?
Was it as calculating as that? Let's just say, without trying to make it conspiratorial, let's just say that was the outcome. Whether it was calculated, intentional, I can't prove it, and I don't think it's necessarily so important to prove it.
But it's the effect.
The effect is, whenever you try to hold Israel to any ordinary standard of legality or morality, we're told, remember the Holocaust.
So there are the very roots of the double standard.
Yeah, I think that were it not for this Holocaust doctrine of uniqueness, Israel could not legitimize most of what it does. That's why if it could legitimize it using conventional standards of legality and morality, it wouldn't keep dragging in a Nazi Holocaust.
Am I right in believing that you have no difficulty in accepting that an essential part of the truth of history, as opposed to Zionist mythology, is that Israel was created mainly by Zionist terrorism and ethnic cleansing?
I don't think it's accurate to say that that's how it was created, and I'll try to explain why. That was the climax. It was the culminating phase. But we should never underestimate, and we should actually learn from, how effective the Zionist movement was at organizing, at mobilizing, at making rational, economical use of resources. Had there not been a foundation, which was really created from scratch, had they not created a foundation from, you could say, 1920 to 48, no amount of terrorism or ruthless military endeavor could have established the state. I read the record and have read the record. I continue to read it. And I have to say it's a marvel of discipline, organization, and so forth. Nothing.
All of which was totally absent on the Arab side.
Yeah, it was totally absent on the Arab side. And as I said a moment ago, it's something that we should all learn from. I'm not saying to learn from the ruthlessness. I'm not in that camp. But in terms of moral discipline, commitment, organization, it's a very impressive show. The only ones in the Arab side who are beginning to learn it with a considerable amount of impressiveness, in my opinion, is the Hezbollah.
I would agree with you.
They're disciplined,